Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dusk. My name is Zamira. This is a podcast for psychics and spiritualists, just people who want to talk about these taboo things that we do not talk about in the spiritual community as much. But today we're going to have a little bit of a lighter episode, and obviously there's a change. I'm just kind of doing it with a different background right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, but also we're going to have our first guest today. I'm so freaking excited. This guest is amazing. My friend Iesha, we've been mutuals for a long time, and she's an amazing Vedic astrologer. I have learned so much from her, and I really wanted to have her share her knowledge to you guys because, it's just mind-blowing fucking stuff, astrology. This is a topic that has been for so long. It's just been characterized into cosmopolitan pop astrology, very shallow type of work. And we need to come back into this understanding that astrology is a deep system of divination, of working with the spheres and the heavens to help understand what energies are happening in our life. I found as a psychic that whenever I am giving certain readings, whether they are collective, whether they are for individual people, a lot of times they will correlate to the astrology. So astrology is a really great tool to sort of check myself a little bit, though I will say I'm pretty dog shit at it. I'm not gonna lie, I am dog shit, which is why I have different people talking about astrology on my podcast and why I am not. I will not talk about things I have no clue about. However, before we invite Iesha here, I do kind of want to have a little bit of a spiel about how astrology, it was dubbed as a pseudoscience multiple times in the past century or two. Before we get into it, hi, my name is Zamira. I am a clairvoyant psychic intuitive. I do virtual reading, so book a reading with me if any of this information resonates with you or if you feel like we're vibing. What I love to do the most in readings is just trying to find the best ways to help you thrive, helping you work through whatever is heavily in your energy that really needs attending to at that time. So go check out my website if you're interested in a personal reading to just detangle some of your life stuff. Yeah, let's talk about astrology. I was very inspired by a conversation and a lecture I had in college, actually, in this class, Philosophy of Science. Yes, the Philosophy of Science. We came across this passage by Paul R. Thagard, a philosopher who has a passage in this book, Why Astrology is a Pseudoscience. So whenever this lecture was being spoken about in class, not gonna lie, I wanted to say so much, but I didn't because I was a pussy. So now I'm gonna say it. So let's freaking go. In this passage, Thagard actually kind of reps for astrology a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of scientists or whatever said, hey, it's testable, but it's not even accurate. And actually, there was this one French guy named Michel Guaquelin, while testing out people's sun, moon, and rising signs and trying to look at their occupations, he did actually find statistically interesting correlations between their occupations, and I'm looking at my notes, between their occupations and the position of certain planets at the time of their birth. So that's fucking funny. People are like, oh, astrology isn't real, but guess what? It is testable, and it actually sort of panned out. Here, this is a quote. Just as astrology would suggest, there is a greater than chance association of athletes and Mars, and a greater than chance association of scientists and Saturn, where the planet is rising or at its zenith at the moment of the individual's birth. And that was on page 30 of this book. So yeah, a French guy actually did prove that astrology has some fucking truth to it, which is really fucking cool. So why don't people talk about this? That's exactly why Paul Thagard made this passage. because he's like, guys, astrology actually has a nugget to it, but I'm going to actually talk about why it is a pseudoscience, and it's actually not because it's not true at all. The reason why astrology is considered a pseudoscience, or the best sound opinion in my opinion, is because even though it can be tested and it is falsifiable, it doesn't strive to complete unsolved problems, and it doesn't progress as a system. And one of those problems that they talk about in the passage is that it does not account for precession, which impacts where the stars are mapped out in the sky from Earth. But guess what? There are other systems of astrology, guys. Yeah, there are. There are other systems of astrology that read the stars in different ways. And one of those that we are going to dive deep into is Vedic astrology, which, guess what? Goes by the position of the stars as they actually are mapped out in the sky, not from how we see them on Earth. So Vedic astrology, even though it's a more ancient method of astrology, it's literally more accurate than tropical, at least because of the precession piece. This is something that I have a bit of beef with in the astrological community that's come through my channel as well, is like, we are not finding ways to advance the system, to really fine-tune the system and make it the most perfect that it can be, or trying to figure out how we can make it more, reliable. That is the reason why it's considered a pseudoscience, which is really sad because there is something to it. The fact that scientists themselves and philosophers themselves are like, hey, actually astrology does have something to it, but because of these other reasons, we can't really stick with it. In this podcast, we're going to talk more about Vedic astrology since it takes care of that precession anyway. So I hope this opens up your view on what astrology is and how it can be seen. So I really hope you enjoy. Iesha is a Vedic astrologer, an intuitive, and an amazing musician. She literally lives the artistic path. She is the embodiment of a feminine in the artistic path. It's amazing. She provides in-depth teachings of Vedic astrology on her Tumblr, and she also shares her music on YouTube and TikTok. Her and I have been mutuals for so long, so I've been able to see a lot of her work, and her posts over astrology are so in-depth. They are so rich. If you look at her writing, it's just beautiful, and it really does help you get a concept of what it all is about. And I really do feel like her expertise in Vedic astrology really challenges pop astrology and just gives this depth that we've all been looking for. The way that she's able to translate ancient texts, she doesn't translate themselves, but the way that she's able to find the information from it and translate it in a perspective that makes more sense for Westerners is honestly astounding. It's very difficult to have a cohesive understanding of these ancient knowings and texts. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy her and her work. I'll leave her links and stuff below as well. So please enjoy. Thank you so much for being here.
Yay! I'm very happy to be here, and I really appreciate everything you said.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, you're freaking awesome. Go to her Tumblr and see her writings, and go check out her music on TikTok because it'll blow your mind just what you're able to create. How did you get into Vedic astrology?
I kind of just came across it at some point, and at the time I was just researching all kinds of branches of astrology, tropical astrology, and then I was looking at you've got draconic astrology and all these other things. Yeah, I just came across it and I found it really fascinating. And initially what really drew me in was the fact that you've got, instead of just 12 signs, you've got 27 nakshatras, which obviously makes everything a lot more specific and detailed to every person. Because a lot of people, they see the patterns in astrology, but they can't help but feel like it's a bit vague. And it's once I started learning about the nakshatras, all that vagueness was completely out the window. Everything's very specific.
You've shown this on your own platforms, looking at the pattern recognition between all the nakshatras, and literally how they share like physical features, how like beauty is
Mm.
a big part of Vedic astrology, and how that all is like so recognizable is insane.
I feel like that's what's drawn a lot of people into learning about Vedic astrology because it's like once you look at those patterns, it's like even if you're like really skeptical, there's a point where it's undeniable and it's like you can look at celebrities and then you can look at people you know in real life and you just see the connections. And sometimes it's not just the looks, it's like the mannerisms. Like maybe someone like moves their face in a certain way that's like really unique to them, but then you notice it in someone else and you're like, oh man, they have the same whatever placement. My little sister, right? My sister and I both have Swati Nakshatra, which is a nakshatra within sidereal Libra and tropical Scorpio. That's another story. But we both have that, and we both have the same trait of like kind of zoning out a lot. Like we just sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but we're just like very spacey and we always like people perceive us as being out of it. Like people are always like, are you even listening? Do you know what's going on? And that's a common trait of Swati because Swati is all about like space and it's ruled by the god of the wind, so it's very like off with the fairies type of vibe.
That is really interesting. The difference between Libra and Scorpio, at least in tropical astrology, is super different. Is there a connection still between the Vedic sign and the tropical sign?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Well, yes, I would definitely say so. For example, in tropical in general, where like people tend to focus more on the emotional and psychological side of things. So, like with Scorpio, we're looking more at how, I don't know, Scorpio is a very like, yeah, emotional sign, tends to care a lot about other people in a very intense way. But then the sidereal like version of that, we're looking at for Swati, for example, it's Libra. And Libra kind of has like it's different, but it has the same qualities in the sense that like Libra is about caring for people. It's about being diplomatic. It's about looking out for other people's needs. It can be very perceptive in the way people see tropical Scorpio. And it's like I don't see one as more right than the other because I just see them both play out in people and situations in, you know, in the same way they both work.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That's really cool. So it's like it really just more so adds another dimension on top of
Yeah,
the
it's
sign.
like yeah, yeah, for sure. I always describe it as like, might sound like a bit too hippie, but I always say it's like looking through a kaleidoscope and then you twist it and you're seeing the same like fractal image, but it's slightly different. And then you've got different colors again and again. That's like what every different system of astrology is like to me, or even everything like esoteric related, astrology, tarot. And then you've got like Chinese astrology, you've got so many different systems, and they're all like real in their own way. They're just different perspectives, like the kaleidoscope.
Do you feel at all that there is more accuracy between one system versus the other?
Oh man, that's a controversial topic. But you know what? Yeah, when I first got into Vedic astrology, I was a lot more into the sidereal
Hmm.
signs. Um, but now after some time, I'm really just seeing both and taking it as both. In fact, I've sort of come full circle and I think of things in terms of tropical signs more often at the moment, but it kind of tends to depend on like what I'm thinking about and what's useful.
Mm.
Um, for myself, it's like I see both in me. I really do. Like, for example, in tropical, I'm a Sagittarius sun. In sidereal, I'm a Scorpio sun. And it's like they both, I don't know, they both describe me and they both live within me, if you will. I really love that it's like and I feel this way about like tarot too. It's basically telling you information that you probably already know on some level. Like everyone has that inner knowing in your heart, in your soul, but it's kind of phrasing it in a way that you can understand. It's like painting a picture for you of something you might have already sensed, but you couldn't put into words, or maybe a pattern that you've seen. like, oh, this person's like this person, or this was like this, but you didn't know why. And then astrology gives you that piece of the puzzle.
And it definitely shows you parts of yourself that you never considered before. Like I remember seeing a video from Claire Nocti, somebody you
Mm,
introduced me to and put me on.
yeah.
The actual book and TV and film patterns versus my own life were insane. And it kind of helped
Mm,
me explain things that I didn't know how to explain before. And it actually
yeah.
made it feel very magical. I think she has a good way of making it very like tied into your own spirituality versus look at the signs and see it as characteristics of people rather than like
Yeah.
spiritual journeys.
Oh, for
But
sure. Yeah. It's like it's not
right,
just a list of traits like you see in tropical astrology. It's like, oh, Gemini talks a lot. Virgo is a perfectionist. It's like it's so much deeper. It's about like the journey of the soul and like what it means to be human, I suppose, as well.
how do you use astrology as a tool for like healing and transformation? How can you see your lower traits within these charts and the
Mm.
signs and the nakshatras and embrace and heal them?
For me, like personally, my main thing in life is like confidence. Like I struggle to feel totally confident. So learning my astrology and stuff has sort of helped me to see like, yeah, what I'm naturally good at and why it is I've always struggled a little bit with that. Um, with the lower traits, that can be a really interesting one because it's like it can illuminate, I guess, bad patterns or behaviors in you that you wouldn't have really noticed otherwise, if that makes sense. Like for me, one of them's I think my Mars is a bit of a not an issue, but it's a bit of a thing for me because I've got Mars in Pisces, and Mars is all about like how you assert yourself, how you stand up for yourself and take action. And Pisces is like a helpless fish. Like it's not very good at asserting itself. It's
He does
it
not
just
want to
goes
do
with the
that.
flow. Yeah, and it just like kind of lets people do stuff to them in some cases because it again, like a fish are, you know, hunted, you know what I mean? Like not saying I'm such a victim, I'm hunted, but you know what I mean? It's like it's not the most assertive placement. And just as an example, knowing that about myself has helped me to work with that energy and realize how it is a strength. Like for example,
Mm.
it makes me more like spiritual in how I navigate every day.
For me, getting to know more about the Ashlesha
Mm,
nakshatra really
yeah.
helped me understand where the fuck am I just crazy? I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like it has a tendency to drive certain people crazy in a way.
Oh yeah.
And how,
Ashlesha's an intense one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
They're
like,
all intense in their own way, but I think Ashlesha is like arguably one of the most intense and one of the most talked about too. Like people love writing about Ashlesha because it like commands attention. And that's another note on like the mixing between the tropical and sidereal versions because it's like Ashlesha's tropical Leo, right? And what's Leo? Like the star, you know, all the attention's on the Leo, but Ashlesha's Cancer in sidereal, but it still has that same crossover of energy because it's like a snake. Ashlesha is a snake, and snakes are like if you saw a snake on the street, everyone would just look at it and be spooked. It commands attention, is what I
yes.
mean. I'm not saying everyone's scared of you, but you know what I mean.
No, no, yeah, I totally get what you mean. But
Mm.
yes, it kind of helped me understand the kind of intensity I may have and the type of energy I'm able to elucidate from others without really being super aware of that. And just being
Yeah.
able to be more aware of that, I think has helped me sort of with my own healing journey, even though I've got a far fucking way to go still.
That's okay. I mean, like that's what we're here for. But
Yes.
yeah, no, for sure, because a big part of astrology as well is like a lot of people, I think everyone on some level craves to see themselves the way other people see them. And
Yeah.
you don't really ever get that like totally clearly, because everything's going to be through the lens of someone else's opinions. Like someone could say, "Oh, you're this, you're that," but it's like, okay, well, that's what you think. But with astrology, you're really getting this like unbiased view of who and what you are on some level. And it's not about like, some people are very resistant to it because they're like, oh, I don't want to be told who I am. I create my own destiny. And that's still true, but it's more like a map. It's like
Mm.
showing you the general outline of what you are.
That's a really good segue into having this discussion about like free will versus
Mm.
predetermination. Astrology in general is used for forecasting certain energies. It has the capability to be super, super accurate, right? In
Yeah.
mapping out current events and what's going on in your own personal life. Do you use astrology as like a map for what's going on in your day to day? Like, do you give yourself mini
Mm.
horoscopes?
For some people that works, because some people have that very like analytical nature where they want to know everything that's going on. But for me, I feel like that would just make me a bit crazy, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
because something's always happening in astrology, and if you always like think about it and don't just go about your life, at some point you'd go a bit like nuts. I don't know, that's just my
Yeah.
thoughts. But when it comes to like bigger life events, definitely like my mother passed away when Pluto was in my fourth house,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
really long transit. So maybe that's not the most significant one, but it was like leaving my fourth house at that point, I'm pretty sure. I'll have to double check, to be honest. And the fourth house is the house of like the mother. So just like things like that. Yeah.
Wow. That's insane. And that was in
Yeah.
Vedic? Or is it the same? Like all of the transits for
Oh
tropical
yeah.
and
Yeah, the
Vedic?
transit,
Oh,
everything's the
yeah.
same because the planets are in the same place. It's just Vedic's going to, or Sidereal's going to interpret it as like a different sign. But the houses are
Mm,
more or less the same. But then that's another story, because even in tropical, you've got like whole signs, which is basically dividing the houses equally. I don't know. I'm probably not the best at explaining that, but it's like if your first house is Scorpio, the next one is Sagittarius, the next is Capricorn, like it's even. But then you've got Placidus, which is a bit more complicated, because sometimes you'll like have have a sign or have a house that like expands in length, and it's like not even, but people find it more specific for that reason. I'm not really sure the science behind that. I probably should, but
that
yeah.
no, that's really interesting though. And that's like it's
Mm.
not a different system, it's a different house system.
Mm. But
Interesting.
Vedic only uses whole signs. They don't really mess with that. They're like, nah, this is just what it is.
This is fine.
Yeah, yes.
There's so much more depth to it than there is to pop astrology. I do have one like question about how it all works. The way that you explain a certain transit or a sign or a nakshatra, is it just that you're providing definitions for everything? Or is it
Mm.
like like it is a divination tool, but is there an
Yeah.
intuitive aspect to it where it's like you have to connect psychically with what's going on?
Yeah, I'd say it's a definitely like a mix of both, and for me the intuitive part's a big part. Like not knocking anyone, but you can tell when some astrologers are like not really tapping into that. They're being very
Mhm.
by the book, and usually those interpretations end up being more like fatalistic or not exactly accurate, because it's like the way astrology works is you can't just take one placement you have and be like, oh yeah, I am this, because you're not just that, you're your whole chart. And it's
Mm.
about how all of those energies like interact. And it's like the whole chart tells a story. And yeah, the individual placements are like a part of you, but you have to look at it holistically. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
would you say that it's formulaic? So, this plus this equals this? Or is it
Mm.
more of like, let's see what we can divine from these certain qualities?
Yeah, I definitely say the latter. Like, I know I've said it a few times during this, but it's just like reading tarot as well. It's like when you have a spread, you don't really look at it like 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. You see it as a bit of like a story where it's all connected. And sometimes based on the spread in question, the cards can change meanings. Like they can mean something different to how you'd usually interpret them based on where they are at that given time. And I feel like astrology is a bit similar.
I
Yeah.
see. Yeah, that's a huge question I've had for a while because,
Mm,
especially with like pop astrology, they'll have you thinking that it's just like, oh, this
yeah.
means this. So
Mm,
therefore, it is this. Whenever
that's
I
right.
meet professional astrologers who are actually doing this, actually reading charts or like really in depthly studying it, and it becomes a more like flowy, intuitive practice. So, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of people get like it's almost like a barrier to entry because it's not being approached in that way.
And it turns a lot of people off of it as well, which I honestly understand because it's like no one wants to be put in a box, and it kind of
Right.
takes the magic out of it when the point of astrology and all this stuff is to feel like magical about your life and, you know, find these really cool connections. You just take all of the fun out of it when you like slap on labels onto everything a bit too much.
Right, exactly. Are you going to have a better reading and horoscope from a person who is working with the astrology rather than a robot who's just computing what could happen, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah, because it's like yeah, there's definitely an intuitive element, and sometimes you can just feel when something means a certain thing, um, and it might not necessarily be exactly what the books say, but the books are like a guideline.
A personal issue I have with the way that people are approaching astrology nowadays is there's a lot of apps for it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
like just putting together these formulas and giving
Mm,
people astrology or horoscopes that way.
mm,
In specific, like the CoStar app, the Pattern app, oh
yeah.
my fucking God. Like they're so goddamn annoying. And then you find out the Pattern app is literally collecting your data, recording you, and then giving you a horoscope based off of whatever personal shit your phone is hearing off
Oh
of
my
that
gosh, I didn't
day.
know about that, but that's crazy.
Yes, I know.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then with the CoStar app, it just feels like negative. Like,
Mm.
have you noticed that at all?
Yeah, no, I had co-star for a little bit just out of interest. Like by then, when it be started becoming popular, I already like knew astrology fairly in depth by that point. So I wasn't impressed by it. But no, but I did
Give
find it
us
like
your
far too,
critiques.
yeah, I did find it far too like general, definitely.
Yeah.
Because once again, it's like you can't just take one placement one by one and yeah, 1 plus 1 equals this. It's like it's how everything works together. And yeah, that being said, it's like it deters some people from astrology, but it also is exactly what it attracts some people to astrology because some people kind of when people feel a bit like lost or something, they are searching for something to define themselves as a bit. They want to find a home in one of these interpretations. And I don't think that's totally bad, but it's like it will probably serve you better if you don't do that and look at it in a more abstract way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Because you don't want to like either get your hopes up or your hopes down about certain things that are happening in your life. And
Mm.
realistically, you never know at what, like, how I want to use the word degree, but I don't want to get people like confused that I'm talking about the astrological degree. It's more of like you don't know the extent of how it's going to manifest in your life, and you don't want to like make yourself nervous or anxious because you might have like a bad placement nowadays. Like I feel like
Mm.
there's a lot of fear mongering when it comes
Oh,
to
for
really
sure.
bad placements. Like,
Yeah.
If there's
Yeah.
a, yeah, what do you have to say about that? Because it's like, how can
Oh, well, I have
we
a lot to say about that
go off, girl?
one. Yeah, so I've noticed this a lot because I've been hanging out on astrology Tumblr, and I love it on there. It's a nice place. I love reading everything and sharing the knowledge, but I've noticed that it's like there are some posts where they'll do stuff like moon in the signs, right? And then they'll like go into the um so we're potential deep dark traumas for each moon sign, and it's like it's implying that everyone is just traumatized. You know what I mean? Like
That is
everyone has
so
something.
Tumblr,
Yeah, I
dude.
know. And it's like everyone has something. I've not met someone who's like never been hurt in their life, but it's like not everyone's traumatized. And plus things like when you've got planets like Saturn, right? Saturn is an intense planet, yes, and it can denote like things that have been a bit hard for you in your life, things that have been a challenge. But it's like Saturn is in everyone's chart. You know what I mean? It's like Saturn has to be somewhere. So I don't think it's like just because you have Saturn in XYZ, you suddenly are like doomed in that area of your life. Because a lot of people have really like there are people who genuinely do have very carefree lives. So how would you explain that, you know?
Yep, this is
Yeah.
true. Right. I
Yeah.
think people get really worried about their Saturn returns, right?
Oh yeah.
Like they
Mm.
will just say, I guess, is it whenever you're 30 or like in your 30s, you're like, oh, well, your life's about to change and go upside down because karmically you're going to reap what you've sown and you're screwed, basically.
Yeah, I know. It's very fatalistic, and I think it doesn't help people with like fears of getting older type of thing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, Saturn returns like I think oh man, I think it's like 27, but I could be wrong. It's like yeah, near 30 thereabouts.
Oh,
Like
fuck.
I
I'm
feel
going
like
to
there's
turn
some
27 this year.
ooh. No, but here's the thing. I don't believe I've never seen it as all bad, and maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I see positives in most things. Like most things do have a positive in it. And Saturn returns can also be Saturn is also about like being an authority, right? Or being like a master in your field. And if your Saturn's coming back, it's like you could be, in fact, getting the rewards for what you've worked hard on. And also career stuff, because Saturn is career. So it's like, I feel like it can be really positive as well. Or like a lot of people start a family at that age,
Oh,
and
wow.
Saturn's about like stability as well. It's like, you know, Capricorn energy, Earth energy. So it's like, it's a year the Saturn return is definitely about like maturing, and there is a little bit of like reap what you sow because um, if you haven't been like nurturing your inner Saturn in a positive way, and you've just been like not very moral, going off the rails, being really crazy, you haven't been like, what's the word? You haven't been like listening to your like own boundaries and things like that, it likely will be kind of difficult for you because you're being forced to confront that. But if you've been dealing with Saturn energy well already, it's like you're gonna get that those
So
rewards. But it's not like a God telling you like, oh, you're gonna be punished and you're gonna be good. It's just a matter of like how you deal with that energy.
that's crazy. See, everybody
Yeah.
has fucking scared me shitless about my Saturn return. Like, I've heard nothing but negative
Mm-mm.
things about it. Like, just people are losing their jobs, their lives are changing, and it's usually not for the better. It's like,
No,
it's
yeah.
crazy. So, would you say, like, your Saturn return could possibly be more of a positive experience if
Yeah, for
you
sure.
have been, like, I guess, in alignment or like feeling connected to yourself, your purpose, and like who you are?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's like if you have a good relationship with Saturn and Saturn energies, I feel like it's more likely to go well because it's
Mm.
like if you're like a good person, it's not necessarily about being like good, but if you're a person who is very what's the word? Like you pay your rent on time, you you pull yourself up if you fall down and you get really anxious about something. You acknowledge that sometimes you have to work for things in life. Like you have the right mentality and you've been living like that for a long time. It's like, well, you probably are in a good place when it comes to Saturn energy. And when your Saturn return comes around, you're going to receive that energy well, and it might propel you into a really good place in your career, especially, or family life. Like, yeah, starting a family, getting a home or something too, uh, like a house physically, because Saturn is very much about like structures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but if you're someone who's like been like a little bit crazy in your 20s, you've been like on drugs and off the rails, having a Britney Spears moment, I don't know. If you've been like that, it might be a bit more difficult to you because it's like you'll be forced to confront this Saturn energy that you're not used to. You haven't been dealing with it.
Thank you so much for talking with me and like giving me the time to like go get like dive deep into astrology. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you. Are there any last
thank
words you
you.
want to say?
No, that's all good. I had a great time, and I guess if anyone has any like questions in the comments for either of us, feel free to drop them. Yeah,
Yes. Okay, I'll put your details like down below so that way people can go check out your stuff. But
yeah,
yay! Okay,
awesome.
I'll see you
Okay,
later.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, that was the end of the interview. Thank you so much again for listening to this podcast of Dusk. Thanks for hanging out with me and Iesha. Again, her links are below. And if you are looking for a personal psychic reading, head to my website at heyyourpsychic.com. And I hope to see you later. So thank you so much. Wasn't that amazing? Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.